Well, I'm really happy to be here. I know everybody says that, but I really am happy to be here. We spent about 29 hours getting home yesterday. 29 hours. And Fiji is right on the international date line. So where I was is actually tomorrow. So my body clock right now, I'm in tomorrow. So, that might be kind of a unique experience for you to meet somebody from the future. So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about my experience with social media, which is a lot different from yours, I know, and talk about my journey and how social media has played a role in my life and in my faith, and also maybe give you a new perspective of how social media can become part of your personal mission field. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into all this. And trust me, there is a point about social media here. But I started getting into this right around 2007, 2008, actually even a little bit into 2006 when everything was just starting. But I want to tell you about a really dark part of my life. It was the darkest part of my life. And this would have been around 2006, 2007, and there were some really, really bad things going on. The first thing that was happening was I was going through a job change, which was kind of fun and exciting because I was starting my own business, but I was also leaving a company I had been with for many years, and I was starting on my own, and I wasn't going to have a regular paycheck anymore, and I was also losing my support group, my friends who I'd been with for a long time. And at this same time, when all these changes were going on, I went through a really terrible divorce. I went through a very, very tough time. My wife was a drug addict and an alcoholic and went in and out of rehab, and she ended up running off with another guy. And so that was really, really, really bad thing. And even though she ran off with another guy, I had to give her half of my money. So I was having all these fun. If you take one thing away from tonight, never get divorced in your peak earning years. That would be the thing that I would say, the one takeaway from tonight. And right in the middle of all this going on, I had this accident, and I had a spinal cord injury. And I went to the doctor. I went to this neurosurgeon, and he's looking at this scan that they did, and there's this like fluid coming out of my spinal cord. And he's looking at me, and he said, "Can you walk?" I said, "Yeah, I can walk." He said, "I want to see you walk." So I walked, and I walked on my toes, I walked on my heels. He said, "Are you having any problems with your cognitive abilities?" So this is like getting really, really scary. So I had to go through this operation, and all this was happening right in the same time. And I was really so stressed. I was feeling all these really deep emotions. Like I was feeling hopeless, and I was feeling helpless, and I was feeling outrage. I was feeling really uncontrolled rage. I wanted to hurt people. And it was a time in my life where I really turned to God, and I said, "It's time for you to take over. I can't handle this anymore." And from that moment on, he did every single step of the way. And one of the things I was beginning to do at that point, as I was starting my new business and getting into social media, is I started to blog. I was starting to write about business for the internet. And the doctors were so worried about me and all this stress I was under. My blood pressure was really high. And it was so high, they were afraid I was going to have a stroke or something that was going to happen to me. They said, "We want you to monitor your blood pressure every hour. You need to take readings every hour." Well, I noticed something really strange. There was 1 hour every day when my blood pressure was below normal. That's when I was blogging, when I was writing. It kind of got me into this zone, and I kind of relaxed, and I forgot about all these things that were going on, all these bad things that were going on in the world. The other thing that happened was people started to read this thing. People started to read my blog, people from all over the world. And they started creating this community around me. And I really needed that at that time. So I think for you, I can't imagine how difficult it must be for you many times to be in social media today, with all the bullying that goes on, the competition that goes on. But at that point, things were still kind of new. Things were kind of innocent on the web. And people started forming around me, and I was starting to make friends. And these were friends who cared about me and what I was writing. And they didn't know about these problems I was having. And I was glad, because I was tired of these problems. I was tired of talking about these problems. And for me, I found this communion with these new people from around the world that supported me and began to love me. The other thing, a real gift, a gift from God during this period, is going to sound really weird, but all these terrible things that happened to me, all these big, deep emotions that I felt emotions that I hope none of you will ever feel, this feel of despair and hopelessness and outrage. God kind of put this new cape of superpowers on me. And my new superpowers were, you felt these really, really hard emotions, these really, really bad emotions. This is going to help you connect with people in a new way. Because now when someone in my blog community is suffering, and I might say, let's call me up, or maybe we can even have coffee or something. And they say, I really feel hopeless. I feel hopeless. And I can look at them in their eye, and I can say, I think I know how you feel. So God gave me these new powers these new powers of empathy that I can connect with people in different ways when they're at their worst. And that has really helped me as I started to work on the web. Well, as I said, I was starting to blog, and something really amazing happened. Hundreds of people, and then thousands of people, and then tens of thousands of people started reading this blog. And every night I would turn to my wife and I said, there's something magnificent going on here. This can't be me. This is the Holy Spirit is moving in some way here. It's leading to something that I know that this is my mission field. And so I should say, as Steve mentioned, I write a business blog. It's a marketing blog. It's not a Christian blog, but I am a Christian writing about business. And what I try to do on the blog is I don't really talk about my faith overtly and distinctly, because I have people from all over the world reading the blog, and they're expecting a business blog. And so most of the people that read my blog, this is rocky ground. Maybe they even reject Christianity, or they're afraid of Christianity. So I want to demonstrate through my actions and through my writing that things can be different, that you can work in a different way. And it comes through. People tell me all the time, there's something different about you. There's something different about your community. And month by month, God started opening these doors, opening these opportunities to have conversations with people. There was one young guy, he's this crazy guy, literally out there in Berlin. And he's this German guy that lives in Berlin. And he started following my blog, and I started reading his blog. And just about every, I would say, fourth or fifth word he used in his blog was effing. And it wasn't effing. It was what you know it is, right? Okay. So, but he's really, really talented. And he's an artist. And he's like hip and cool and a millennial. And I thought, gosh, if he writes for my blog, maybe people think I'm hip and cool. I'm a millennial too. And so I said, would you want to write for my blog? And he said, yes. I said, but we've got a few new ground rules now. I said, no, you can't use this effing stuff anymore. We have a different standard here. And so we became friends, and I coached him, and he's become a magnificent blogger. And even on his blog, he doesn't use effing anymore. And one day he wrote me a note. He said, Mark, he said, I know you're a Christian. He said, you would not believe where I went last night. He said, I went to a Bible study. I said, really? I said, do you have a Bible? He said, I've tried reading the Bible, but it's so confusing to me. I said, I've got a special Bible for you. I said, so I sent him the ESV Bible. I said, it's kind of like a blend between the Bible and National Geographic. It has like maps and pictures and all these confusing things. It will help you understand. And so again, the doors, we're opening. I have this friend. I have this friend now in Pakistan as another example. He's a Muslim there, and he is just the sweetest young man, and we've grown not to just like each other, but really love each other. And he posts on Facebook that Mark Schaefer is my greatest hero, and he is like a father to me. And I actually mentioned him in one of my books. And he took a picture of how he was mentioned in the book, and that's his Facebook banner, his mention in this book. So one day he was posting some really disturbing things on Facebook about how upset he was and how really depressed he was. So I said, maybe we should Skype. Sounds like you need somebody to talk to. And it turns out that he's been dating this girl for 3 years, but she's from a different Muslim sect. And he wanted to marry her. And his parents said, if you marry her, you will never step foot in this house again. He said, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, I just thought this is the time. This is the time I need to get his mind in a different direction. And I said, I've been through some really hard times. I've had some times when I felt really hopeless too. I said, but here's what works for me every time. Have you thought about praying? Have you thought about praying? He said, but what God are you talking about? What God are you talking about? Now, one of the things I've learned is whenever it's really, really hard. It's really, really risky for a Muslim person to change to Christianity. And I'm not an expert. I'm not a missionary. So, at some point, if that conversation progresses, we need to get him involved with someone who can really handle these things. So, every week, every month, these little doors have opened, and they open up almost every week. I was telling my wife this week I have this dear friend in Atlanta, and he grew up as a Christian, and his father was a minister here in Knoxville. And he's gone away from his faith over the years, and I can just see the turmoil. I can see the struggle. And he wrote me a note this week. I wish I had it. I would read it to you, but it was something like, I can see how different you are, and you inspire me to be good. And I think it's time for me to have that conversation with him too. Say, Billy, let's talk about where you came from. Let's talk about where you need to go next. What are you really seeking? What's this hole that you need to fill? And this all came through Facebook, Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, my blog, all these connections as I see that my audience became my mission field. But I saw this was still leading to something else. I was just getting all these amazing experiences and all these opportunities. And then about 2 years ago, I got a call from Piers Vandermura, who is, of course, our missions director. He said, Mark, every year we have this group that gets together in Finland. And we try to teach missions in the Muslim world how to use digital outreach to connect with Muslims. And we really don't understand how to use social media. We really don't know what this is about, and we need help. Can you come to Finland and teach the missions and help us? And I thought, this this is the path. This is where the Holy Spirit has been leading me. This is the call I've been waiting for. So I was really nervous about this because I'm not a missionary. I've never been overseas on a mission trip. And so I read everything I could, and I studied everything I could, and I read books, and I called Mike Kuhn. I said, Mike, you got it. What do I do? He said, whatever you do, don't show the bottom of your shoes. I said, okay, got that. And so, Mike was coaching me and what to do. And so I worked really hard on this presentation. And my presentation was on the second day. So the first day, I just listened to all these presentations, and I talked to as many of these missionaries as I could. And I went back to them at my room that night, and I tore it up, and I started over. Because I was, that day just really, it changed me. It changed me forever. And I want to talk a little bit about how I want you to think about changing too. It changed the way I was thinking about missions and missionary, because I've been fascinated with missions ever since I was a little boy. It's funny that I just came back from Fiji. When I was a little boy, my grandmother had a missionary from Fiji live at her house for a while. I just thought this was the most amazing thing, that this guy came from Fiji. And I love going to the mission conference every year. I love hearing the stories, and I love meeting the missionaries. But what happens to me, and I think what happens to a lot of people, is you go to the mission conference, and you listen to the stories, and then you get busy again. And you forget. And you forget about what's going on in other places in the world because, we got to go see the Avengers movie, or we got to go to, the mall, or we got to go, spend time on Facebook or whatever we're doing. And the reason this changed my perspective is that every person I talked to was persecuted or had escaped persecution. And I talked to this guy that lives up in the Northwest, and I said, well, how'd you end up there? He said, well, I was tired of being tortured. He said, and I got some inside information that the next time the police came to my door, I wasn't coming back. I needed to leave. I needed to get out. I met a mission who escaped from the Middle East and has started this media outreach, and she is threatened with her life every day. People from ISIS are writing her, and they're saying, I'm going to kill you. If it's the last thing I do, if it's the last breath I take, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you because of your faith. And finally, I heard a guy there, a speaker, who was a former jihadist. And if you remember, this was about 2 years ago when I went, it was about 18 months ago, I guess, when I went the first time. And this was right after the first Western journalist had been killed over there. I'm seeing there's nobody here that's real young, right? Other than the babies, okay. So the jihadist was saying, you just have no idea what's going on. He said, you have no idea what's going on. You don't know, they're lining up Christians, and they are raping the wives in front of the husbands, and they are crucifying them down the street, and they're lining up the children, and they're beheading them, and then they're in every village. And this man is an atheist. And this is what he said. This is a war that cannot be won with bullets or tanks or shells. This is a war about faith and hope. And the Christian message must win. This is coming from an atheist who gave up the jihadist life, moved to Germany, and wrote a book about this. And he compared it to fascist Germany. He said, this is what happened. After World War I, the young men of Germany had no hope. They had no jobs. They were emasculated. They had no pride. And Hitler said, I will give you a uniform and I will give you a gun and people will fear you. And that's what's happening today. Thousands of people are coming from all over Europe. One of the number one countries, recruiting countries for ISIS, is Belgium. They're streaming in because they have no job. They have no hope. They want to feel that pride. They want to feel that excitement. And what he said was, they are going because they don't have another message. They don't have hope. And we must find a way to connect to these people. So when I was studying about this, one of the things I learned that was so fascinating is that they did a scholarly study about how effective Christian missions have been in the Muslim world. So Muhammad died 1,400 years ago. And since then, there have been, they looked at conversion events. So they define a conversion event as 1,000 people in some area converting to Christianity, from Muslim to Christianity, okay? Since 1400, in the last 1,400 years, there have been 88. 88 in 1,400 years. 80 of those have been in the last 3 years. They call this the wind through the Muslim world. Why? It's the internet. Because now people have a place to find the truth. They have a way to explore about Christianity and ask questions and find people in a safe way. So this had a tremendous impact on me, learning all this, hearing all this. The other thing that I learned is that ISIS is using social media really, really well, really well. And we have a bunch of missions out there who don't even know. Some of the churches that are supporting them are saying, we don't even want you to be on social media. Just there's a disconnect. There's a great misunderstanding about the opportunity and the potential there. So I came away and I was determined that I couldn't forget anymore. That I had been given this gift, given this opportunity to go and hear of the way these people have suffered for their faith. And the story that was playing in my mind was, wow, you're crap. You're going to go home and watch the Avengers movie. And I realized I had to do something. I had to do something. So, and I'm working on some things, and there's a way that you can help as well. So the first thing that I'm doing is that I'm going back to Finland this year, but this time I'm taking a team with me, because it's not just going to be me. We're taking a group of people who are professional digital experts, and we're going to train missionaries for years. They're going to buddy up with them, and they're going to work with them and train with them for years. The other thing that Piers and I talked about was, what can we do to keep people connected like I'm connected now? I mean, we all can't have this experience. We all can't go to Finland and hear these stories and have an impact. But what can we do? How can we even use social media to stay connected, especially to the young people in our church, to keep this at the top of our mind? So we started this thing called, this blog called reclamationstories.org, right? Got that right? reclamationstories.org. And so what I would like you to do is subscribe to this blog. This tells the stories of the missions. Once a week, you get a cool story. You get something that's educational or inspirational, or maybe it's just pictures or video that Piers takes on his travels. But it's just once a week, you'll get a little reminder that there are people out there who are working and suffering, and we can't forget. We need to keep this in our minds all the time. The other thing I'd like you to consider is once you get those stories, share those stories. Because the stories that we share, the ideas that we share, this is what changes the world. And if everybody in this room shared these stories once a week, the impact would be enormous compared to just the church doing it. We need everybody to help and say, look, this is something that was interesting to me. This was something that inspired me. And you never know. Maybe that'll open a door with someone. Maybe that will be the beginning of your journey and your own personal mission field. So that's my message for tonight. That's been my 30 minutes. And I had in my mind things I wanted to talk about. I think I covered most of them. But if not, maybe I'll get to answer them in the Q&A. And I'll talk about anything that you're interested in. It just anything that has to do with social media at all, or about business, or what you're thinking about your careers or college or whatever. Be happy to talk about it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Anybody? Let me go ahead and get it started. One of the questions that we have, as we've kind of talked around this, and is illustrated up here with the slack line, is the idea, the tension between, and you talked a little bit about this at the beginning, and the tension between social media creating, we can present whoever we want to be, the tension between genuine relationship and cyber, whatever, false, superficial kind of relationship. Would you talk a little bit toward that?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think it must be just so difficult, is this pressure to always be wonderful, right? We have to have our shiny best selves on Facebook. And I saw this statistic that haunts me, that for a third of the people, when they look at their Facebook news stream, the overwhelming emotion they feel is jealousy. And you can kind of see why, because people only post the best things. And, if you only have the most beautiful babies and take the most beautiful vacations and you cook the most beautiful food, everyone's going to say, wow, my life isn't like that. And so I make it a point to be messy sometimes and to be ugly sometimes. And not ugly mean, but I mean just to talk about things, to send a message to say, hey, I'm a normal person. I'm having a bad day. I saw something that upset me, because I don't want people to put me up on a pedestal. I don't want people to feel this jealousy all the time. We're all equal in our human condition. And so one of the things I've learned is when I take little risks like that, I mean, I'm not a person that talks about myself and my life and my kids and my life all the time. But when I do expose raw things, when I do talk about, for example, this talk that I gave tonight, I actually gave part of that talk in public in Boston, and talked about the problems I had with my marriage and all the bad things, because I wanted people to see that I'm not I'm not a big shiny ball someplace, that I'm a human person too, and we're all connected in that way. And this is what happens. Every time I'm real, every time I'm a little bit messy and not shiny, people say, wow, I'm going through the same thing right now. Wow, how did you know to say that now? This has been on my mind. This has been on my heart. Could I talk to you about this? Every time I'm a real human and not a shiny human, I get rewarded. And that's the way people connect. So I know it's really hard, but I would encourage you to try to connect that way too. Try to stay as as authentic as you can be.
Any questions from you all out there?
How long did it take you to be able to transition to your own business?
How long did it take you to be able to transition to your own
Really,
business?
really what I tell people starting a business is you got to be prepared to be broke for about 2 years to really do it right. You have to have the either, you know, the big thing for me is my kids were college was paid for. So my kids were on their way out, and I had the financial means to really try something different. It took me really about 2 years to get to a point where I said, yeah, you know, I'm doing about as good as I was before, and life is pretty comfortable. But I see that almost in any kind of business, is that you know, if you're not prepared to stick it out for 2 years, you make desperate decisions if you got cash flow pressure to feed your family. So I was able to be patient and do it right. So it worked out pretty well.
What else? What are the things as y'all interact with social media? It's a part of your everyday.
How many people are on Snapchat?
Raise them high. Be proud.
Everybody under 30. If I said, who's on Snapchat? Who's under 30? Same hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is anybody active on Google Plus? Oh, actually, 2 people are active on Google Plus. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. No.
Says the expert. Sell your stock. Quick.
Well, I mean, I mean, it took me a long time to figure out what I'm good at. You know, I wasn't a good athlete. I wasn't a good musician, and I wasn't going to be an astronaut. But sometime in my 30s, I figured out what I'm good at is I see how trends come together. I can see where this is going, and this is going, and that's what's going to happen next. And when Google announced Google Plus, even before I saw it, I said, it's not going to work. And here's why. In real life, when we shop for a car, we like to have choices. So we'll go to Chevrolet, we'll go over to Mazda, we'll go to Toyota. If we want breakfast cereal, we like that great big aisle with Frosted Flakes and my personal favorite, Captain Crunch. But it hurts the roof of your mouth, which is puzzling why it's so popular. It cuts your mouth. But on the internet, we only have bandwidth for one thing. All right? So the strategy on the internet is to dominate a niche. So we have Twitter. We don't need another Twitter. We've got one that works. We don't need another YouTube. We don't need another LinkedIn. And guess what? We don't need another Facebook. It's full. Game over. You got to find something else. And Google didn't offer. Who's the number one user of Google Plus? Mark Zuckerberg. Right? He's got more followers than anybody else on Google Plus. There's nothing Google Plus does that Facebook can't copy. There's no intellectual property. And now I think they're starting to kind of break it up, and they haven't been able to market the thing. Their only hope was if they put together this big marketing campaign and they found the cool kids in junior high and high school, and they got them to switch. Right? It's easier to move to a house in another city than it is to move off of Facebook. Right? And that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to get people to move off of Facebook. But you got to move everybody. And you got to move your pictures of Grumpy Cat. And all your settings on Farmville. And all the things you love on Facebook. You got to move all that stuff. It just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. Some people love it, and there's, some good little niches on there. There's a good photography community, and there's some good little professional communities, but it's not going to go mainstream.
So with the cereal analogy,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is how you were thinking of it, but were you kind of saying
No, it does hurt the roof of your mouth, just to be clear. It's not just me. Other people raise their hands too.
But when you have all those options there, like you like to have it, but you already know what you want. It's like you go into the store thinking, I'm going to see what's new. And
Yeah,
you
maybe.
end up getting the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, why change social media when this one's already been working just fine?
No, that's right. I mean, we only have the bandwidth. We're in this. What I've written about in my new book is we're in this incredibly information dense world, and we don't want to keep trying new things. I mean, some people do, but most people don't. And I saw this statistic that kind of blows my mind, that by 2020, the amount of information on the internet is going to increase by 500%. Now, is that true? I don't know. I make up most of my statistics. But this one I think really is true because it came from somebody else. And if you can imagine between now, if you can imagine how big the internet is, in the next 5 years, there are going to be 5 of those. I mean, it's like, wow. So do you think it's going to be a little harder to be in business? Do you think it's going to be a little bit harder to stand out? That's why we need your help to help spread the information on our reclamationstories.org blog. Did you guys all write that down on your smartphone someplace? Reclamationstories.org. Oh, is it up there?
It was up there.
It was up there. Okay, awesome. So that's. I mean, I did all this research about what do we need to do? How do you stand out? And this is what it gets down to. It's the messages that get shared. That is where the power is. So we've got all these missions and they've got all these stories, but it's not going to matter unless those stories ignite, unless those stories spread. That's where we need your help. That's one way you can support missions. That's one way. You don't have to go. I see my friend Brandon back here just got back from China. I'm going to be going off to Finland again in a couple weeks. You don't have to go to China. You don't have to go to Finland. This is a way everybody can help in some little way every week.
Yeah, I'll bring it back to the point you just made about 500%
Uh-huh.
Do you think we're going to have another knock-on bust when it comes to ideas?
I think the biggest issue, and it's already happening, is going to be with security and safety on the internet. The issue with complexity is complexity doesn't grow in a linear way. Complexity grows like that. And nobody understands how the internet works anymore. And as the internet goes up like this, that's just also the number of holes that are available for people to steal stuff. Cedar Springs got hacked last year. Took us down, right? Every week you're reading about something. So this is the most unpopular opinion I will ever express, but this is the truth. I think what's going to have to happen at some point, probably in the near future, is the government's going to have to intervene. They're going to have to say that the internet is essential to national security and the commerce of the country. It's going to have to be regulated like a utility. And people don't want regulation on the internet, but the amount of hacking and problems on the internet are going to continue to increase unless there's some standard set around security measures and firewalls. And I mean, there's crazy, scary stuff going on. So I think business-wise, I don't see any kind of bust. I'm kind of bullish on the internet, but I think the big issue that could really cave everything in for everybody is the safety and security. Yes, sir.
Do you think social media is hindering the culture of real relationships outside of social media? It's so much easier to send text or Snapchat than it is to really interact.
Yeah. That's a good question. I get that question from parents a lot, especially, that they'll say, I'm really worried. Are my kids Do they not have, social skills anymore? We had, I have this lovely stepdaughter, Hannah. I don't know if anybody know Hannah Baker? You know Hannah? So Hannah's not here, so I can embarrass her. But this was really interesting to me. This is happened about 3 or 4 years ago, and it opened, maybe longer than that now, but it opened my eyes as to what you're talking about. So she was like texting this boy down the street, and she was kind of interested in dating this guy. So she was in his room texting, and he was in the room texting, and they were going back and forth on Facebook. And he said, "Oh, there's this new band that I really, really like." "Oh, cool. Okay. Well, I'll burn you a CD and bring it up to you." "Oh, okay." So he comes up, gives her the CD, and then goes back to the room, and they keep texting again. I thought, wow. We are really in a different world. And a lot of the parents say, "Gosh, I'm really worried about this." But my message is, the ability to manage relationships over Snapchat or Twitter or text messaging, that's the world. It's not going back. So you're developing relevant skills. It's different than what I'm comfortable with, but we're not going back. So if you're really, really good at managing relationships and even conflict on social media, you're going to fit right in because you're going to rule the world, right? So that's uncomfortable, but my parents were uncomfortable, with that crazy music, that crazy rock and roll, right? So every generation is uncomfortable, and you know what? I love the new generation. I am inspired by the millennials. I'm awestruck by the millennials. I love what they're doing with our culture. I love what they're doing with the way they're starting new businesses. They're teaching me how to do business in a new way. So I'm not going to correct you and say, tell you which fork to use at the dinner table. I might tell you not to text at the dinner table, but you're teaching me a new way to live and to learn, and I think that's how the people in my generation, I think we need to be humble. This is the first generation in history. We're learning from the young people. First time ever. It's never happened. So I think that is my plan on staying relevant, to make you my BFF.
I'm really curious along that line that there's the us older folks that it feels like it's false and it's superficial and he just came down and handed her and then went back and it doesn't. I'm curious, do you all feel like that's an issue, like a problem, or do you just kind of look at it and go, "Oh, that's just kind of what Mark was saying, that's just kind of the way it is, that's reality"? Do you feel like it's a negative thing?
Well, I would say yes and no, because if you think about it, in an older generation, you wound up writing letters in the mail to people about things that were going on in your life. Whereas now it's more immediate as far as what is going on in your life to parents, to friends, things like that. You're forced to put your feelings and your thoughts in words so that other people can understand. And I see this at work all the time, that some people are not versed as well in business writing in emails, but there are classes on how to write a business email. And I find that when you're forced to be put in that situation to put your thoughts and your feelings in words, that is a better form of communication. Now, in the downside of it, texting inside a house when you're inside the house with each other and doing something that minor, I personally would have an issue with it as a parent,
No, it's your house.
but it's my house.
It's your house. Yeah. Well, one of the great things, and again, I think this is partly goes in hand with this idea of looking at your social media experience as a potential mission field. Is part of it is having the courage to surround yourself with the right people too. And if there are people that are toxic out there, unfriend them, get rid of them, stay centered, stay kind. And I'll tell you that there's almost every city in the world, I've made some connection through social media that I could go to almost any city in the world, and if they knew I was there, they'd have me to dinner at their house. So you can build really amazing connections, really amazing relations, even 140 characters at a time. Yeah. There were a bunch of other hands. Yes, sir.
Soccer will continue to grow in the U.S. on channels and
On what? Soccer?
yeah. So it's like they're like 20 channels on like football you can find with like
Yeah.
maybe like 3 channels you can find.
All right, you heard it here first. Badminton.
The expert.
Yeah, I think you got to look at where young people are spending their time today. Soccer, right? And so I think that's going to, yeah. I think soccer is huge. It's going to be huge. I don't think it'll overtake football or baseball or basketball, in my generation, but maybe, in your generation, it might. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, in the context you're talking about toxic relationships, what I see if you scroll down through an article and you see the comments down there,
Yeah.
and you see the bullying going on in the comments.
Yeah.
Sometimes as Christians we don't always put ourselves very well in those sections. There's a tension there where I'm not a big commenter on articles. I read them and I get angry and I don't comment on the new stuff. But sometimes they're so provocative, but I feel almost like I should say something lovingly, but then I never do because I don't know if I'm scared to, or if I just think it's going to go in one ear and out the other. I don't know what to do there as a Christian in an environment like that. It's pretty toxic.
There's been a lot of that
It's really hard.
going on lately
Yeah.
in social media. Yeah.
There was one situation where somebody was toxic to me. And it was really kind of ridiculous. But I go out of my way to people, to be kind, to be, to be helpful. And this guy really didn't know me that well, and he's mean to everybody, really. And he was kind of mean to me. And so I wrote this really, really mean, just blasted him with a bazooka. And deleted it. I said, I gotta pray about this a little bit, because I gotta keep showing up the same way. Is this an opportunity to show up in a way that people can see there's something different about me? And so I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, I don't know why you had to be so toxic. This is somebody that I used to know at one time. I said, I missed you as a friend. I said, I missed you. And I said, I hope that we can get together and talk, and if there's something behind the scenes that's causing this, let's just talk. Let's pick up the phone and talk. And the funny thing is that he just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. He just exposed himself, because how do you defend something like that? Here in the face, he's being toxic and just being mean to be mean. That's how he gets his attention. I'm basically saying, what can I do to help you? Do you want to talk? Can we be friends? Because I don't know why you're being so toxic. And that just kind of shut him down. And then people said, "Wow, you really handled that well." So I just I have the same reaction you do. I get so angry sometimes, and I just think, I gotta show up as a Christian. This is my opportunity to show people that we can be different. And I'm not always successful. I have bad days too. I'm irritable. My wife is shocked right now because she never sees that side of me. Yes, Dale?
phone or ask to see them in person. That's the key thing. You should get into these conversations in email, social media, whatever, and deeper, deeper into reflections. And you can't see a lot of that. It seems to me you can't see a lot of it. It's really behind the person stuff. So
Right.
the key is to get face to face, or at least on the phone.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think I had a teacher one time, and he said, you know, he gave me this explanation and made me think about this is how God must see the world and see us. And he said, everybody has this cute baby picture, and everybody starts out as this really beautiful, innocent baby, and all through their life, crap happens, and it forges you and pounds you and changes you into something else. So whenever I find people like that, I just try to think about God probably still sees that person as this innocent little baby that just wants to hold that baby again. And I just think about, I don't know what's happened to that person. I don't know what they're going through right now. Try to show grace. Try to be patient. And again, I'm not perfect, but that's how I try to be patient with people.
Are there, along that lines of the responding and the lashing out and expressing your opinion, you get mad, and instead of not writing, you do write and you get it, and that kind of stuff. Are there any stats that you know of how much of that? It just seems to me like at some point that turns into noise, just white noise. How much of that is really listened to? Do people really pay attention to? How much of it is just, here we go again kind of stuff? Any idea?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to change somebody's mind on the internet. I think Dale's point about trying to talk to people or trying to sit down with people. That's how you make real progress. On the internet, whenever we make these initial connections, they're weak relational links. They just open the door. To really turn it into a strong link, you need to have a conversation. You need to meet the person or talk to them on Skype or something like that. But there's no question these weak relational links can certainly turn into very, very strong friendships and even love. There's people around the world I've met through social media that I love them and they love me. I think part of my survival is to know when it's noise, is to know when to filter that out and just say, I gotta ignore this. And it's hard. It's really hard. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Mark, have you ever taken a fast from social media and seen how it might affect you?
Never taken a fast from social media. When? Cruises. Yeah.
Part two is, would you or anyone you know be interested in leading the charge for a 2016 fast for the entire season of Lent?
Well, okay. Yeah, there are two interesting questions. Well, I'm a little bit different because internet marketing is my business. And my blog is my business. I've had my business since 2008. I have not spent one dime on advertising or promotion of any kind. So the content and the engagement I have on the web, that has created this global business. So, my wife and I, we got to go to New Zealand, and we got to go to, because I had a customer pay for me to go. We had, when I was in Fiji Airways say, oh, wow, cool, you're coming to Fiji? Let us take you out to dinner. We're going to put you on a cruise, and we're going to do all this stuff. So, if I want that stuff to go on, I can't take a fast. This is my business, consulting, and I teach. And so, I need to stay on top of every single trend, because when I go into a class, this is graduate school of people who are business professionals. If something happened in the news that day, they're going to ask me that day. So, I've got to stay. Now, whenever we I mean, I do take time off. Whenever we were in Fiji, what I did was I wrote ahead, got everything kind of going on my blog. So I did no writing, no blogging, basically no engagement for 2 weeks while we were in New Zealand and Fiji. When I'm on a cruise, there's no internet service, so that's really nice too. The idea about the fast during Lent. I mean, the thing that I'd be curious about is I think we can all examine our lives and think about how do we glorify God in whatever we do. So for me, being on the web is a way to glorify God. It's a way for me to do something positive and proactive to connect, just to connect with people and be an example and to look for opportunities to open that door. So it would be counterproductive for me because this is my mission field and I don't want to let people down. I don't want them to wonder where I went. So I mean, I think you'd have to examine, should I be on the web? Should I not be on the web? Let's pray about this and think about what is the best thing for me to do as a person, as an individual, to glorify God. That would be the way I would look at it.
I'd just like to add to that. In any area in your life that you're engaged in, as Christians, we bring our relationship to God to that. And that passage in Psalms where David's praying, "Search me, O God, and know my heart, and see if there's anything unclean in me." I think that you bring that in your motives and your approach to anything you're involved in. So if you're praying that prayer and you're looking at your social media interactions and you're seeing they're incredibly self-involved and self-promoting, and that's what's coming across, that maybe God will show you that and allow you to show up in a way that shows that Christians can use social media differently in a way that glorifies God. And I think that Mark is always on mission. Not perfect, but he sees his social media presence that way.
There's a question there. Right.
I got three kind of, and then maybe also a short story. One question was, do you think it's okay to be overtly Christian on Facebook? Do you think it's a good evangelistic tool? And three is, do you think your involvement on Facebook could be dangerous if you are looking at being a long-term missionary?
Being what?
A long-term missionary. And the quick story I was going to share kind of had to do with something else said about getting frustrated on when seeing different people's posts. I like to debate, so sometimes it's hard for me not to get in if I actually do take time to read something and have the time to post something. And there's this one time I was reading something that my friend posted, and it was sometime like a year or two back, but about gays and homosexual relationships and stuff, and a bunch of people jumped on her about it, and I think maybe there was somebody who was Christian who I disagreed with, who I was wanting to debate with, and as I read further down, I read this other person's comment who was very clearly not Christian, and I felt like I guess God was calling me to talk to that person because they had the same name as me, and she kind of said something about not all of us got it all together, and we're not all of us are good people, perfect people kind of, and that just kind of hit me in my head. I was like, whoa, maybe that's the way we come across, but we're not. True Christians are Christians because they realize that they're a mess and they're fallen and they need a Savior. And so I basically kind of shared that on, it's a person I've never met, it was, I guess, a friend of my friend's. Anyway, so I kind of just shared that, hey, we're not perfect either. I'm sorry if it comes across that way. We're not perfect. We need a Savior. We realize that we're a mess and we're horrible sinners, and that's why we have chosen to become Christians. And kind of shared the gospel and said I wanted, it'd be nice to get in touch with you, or if you
on Facebook in response, but it's kind of just a chance to share.
Thank you very much. I mean, that certainly is common, that sort of debate. And it's, it's throughout the Bible. Whoops. Just pulled myself apart there. Throughout the Bible, we're told it's hard to be a Christian. It's hard to speak about your faith, and you should expect to be persecuted in some way. Around your question about is it okay? I have a friend who does similar work as me, and she's a lot more overt about her Christianity. And she was really hurt the other day because she responded to someone and mentioned her faith. And the lady said, "Oh, you're a Christian. I am out of here." Unfollowed her, blocked her. And so you have to kind of weigh is, okay, now if that person followed me, is there some way I can keep them in the fold long enough that they can get to know me? They can get to, they can see that there's something different. Maybe I can meet them. Maybe I can talk to them. So, I mean, it's different. It's different opportunities. I look at this entire world. The number 2 country that reads my blog is India. The number 4 country that reads my blog is Pakistan. And they're growing like crazy. India was like number 5 or 6 a year ago. And I'm going to India. I'm going to India in November. No, yeah, I'm going like on a speaking tour because I'm selling more books in India than America and the UK put together. Now, so if I talk a lot about my faith, is that going to go boom? Is that just going to send those people away? Is that going to create a wall? I want to tear down walls. I don't want to have these walls. So, and there's a group of us on the web. There are a lot of Christian leaders on the web, kind of in this marketing field, and we know each other, we support each other, and we help each other. So does that? You had a couple different questions. Did that help? Did that answer some of your questions? What did I miss?
Well, I guess I was just kind of asking what your opinion was about being a women present on.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out. Here's something. 2 weeks ago, there was a story in the New York Times. It was an amazing piece of journalism. And it documented how ISIS was converting a Sunday school teacher in Washington State over a period of 4 or 5 months. She was at the point, through social media, where she was ready to leave her family, buy a ticket, meet someone in Austria, and go to and become part of ISIS.
Had never met anybody personally from it, never talked to them one-on-one.
No. So it's like, wow, how can that happen? How can that happen? Well, this was a person who was very lonely. She didn't have a lot of support. And when they beheaded the journalist, she was curious. How can a religion behead somebody as part of their faith? So she started Googling it. She started looking for questions. ISIS saw that. They're monitoring it. They're looking for people who are interested. So they connected to her on Twitter, through Twitter, started making connections with her. Then they started Skyping. She built this relationship with this man in London. They were spending hours and hours with her every single night. They were sending her gifts and teaching her how to be a Muslim. She converted to Islam while still teaching Sunday school because they said, we don't want people to persecute you. You're in America, so go ahead. Keep faking it. That's the right thing to do. Finally, they said, we want you to get a ticket. We want you to come to Austria. Well, her grandparents saw that something was happening, and they intervened, and they actually addressed the guy on Skype, the guy from ISIS, and they said, stay away from this girl. And they did this FBI investigation, and what they found out was this guy that she was kind of flirting with was a bomb maker. 51 years old, has 3 kids, living in London, and she was ready to go to Austria to become an ISIS bride, and they were going to make her into a human bomb. So, can you use social media to evangelize? And we're behind. I mean, Christianity is really behind in that kind of thing. Let's give her a chance.
Have you heard any good success stories come from your missionary conference?
Oh, yeah. Amazing success stories. Amazing success stories. There's a young group of people in Tunisia who have been, they're amazing. I mean, they're like millennial missionaries. And they have such a heart and such a passion. And they really inspired me, because what I found is that every missionary is trying to learn this stuff. And while they're learning this stuff, they're not planting churches, because they're learning this and this and this and this. And I'm thinking, if you're running this like a business, you've got one group of people who are really, really good at what they do, and they help everybody. So that's what I'm trying to do. But these people in Tunisia uses Facebook more than America. Tunisia loves Facebook. And so I mentioned that the reason that there's the wind through Islam right now is because of the internet. And so in particular, there's a young woman over there who's running the social media over in Tunisia. And she's getting these little inquiries. She said, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. I want to learn more. And, people are saying, I want to learn more, but I'm afraid. Can I see you? Can I meet you? And I mean, she's meeting these people from Facebook in these cafes and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh. But, she's been safe. And she's having amazing, amazing success. There's lots and lots of success stories. And then, like I said, for the first time in 1,400 years, there's momentum going the other way. And it's because of the internet. Yes, you had a question too.
You were saying earlier about how, you think that it's keep growing, social media won't go back to, the old ways.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer, people still, prefer to call someone instead of text them. And sometimes they'll call someone, they'll hang up and just text and say, and I'm like, well, I called you to tell you about what to do.
Yeah.
Do you think there's just a way to, kind of go back or to just keep going?
I think that's good. That's a personal decision. You got to be your own person. That's what I love too. This is going to sound really weird, but I spend a lot of time writing my blog. But in terms of spending time on social media every day, I spend maybe 20 minutes a day. I don't spend that much time. And I go and I talk to all these big conferences, and I'll talk to 1,000 people or a couple thousand people. But I like having dinner with somebody or having coffee with somebody. I like connection one-on-one, kind of like you. So follow your own heart, and if that's what fits for you, surround yourself with people who will support you in that. I think that's great. Yes, ma'am.
What would your strategy be for, I teach high school, and these kids are on for more than 20 minutes a day. It's hours and hours.
Yeah.
And the phone is their lifeline. And to me, I'm I wish they just didn't have it. One time I took a phone away from a kid, thought her dad didn't get it until the next day. Complete, you would have thought the world was ending. Complete breakdown. And for me, it's I would just want to cut them off, because I feel they just don't even know how to be away from that. So at what point do you think it's an addiction and becomes unhealthy? Do you think cutting someone completely off is the best way to go?
Well, the research just came out. Actually, it was a recommendation, I think, from a pediatric society and they said that up until the age, so the problem is that up until the age of 15, your brain is still being wired. So basically by the time you're 15, you're pretty much done. When people say, think out of the box, your box is kind of done by the time you're 15. So your brain is really active making all these synaptic connections, and all the experiences in your life are wiring you to be a certain kind of person by what's happening in your environment. And so what these researchers said is that up until the age of 2, you should have no access to screens whatsoever. Should all be human connection. And up until the age, I think they said 13, was it 13? 13 or 15. They said 2 hours a day. They said to allow, the brain to properly form is that you've got to have sensations other than a lighted screen. So there's no question that we've got a generation that is not just different from the last generation, but it is being wired differently because of the interaction with these screens. It's a hard question. I think it comes down almost to like what this young guy was asking about his decision to be on or off. I don't think it's going to, well, actually, I was almost said it's not something that's going to be regulated. In Korea, it is regulated. It's against the law to be on the internet more than a certain hours of the day. I don't know how they enforce that. And the reason they passed this law is because there were people who were dying. They were playing games all day, all night, no eating, no sleeping. They wouldn't even leave the game to go to the bathroom. And there were people that were so exhausted. They were having people dying in Korea because they're addicted to these games. There are now 2 hospitals in Germany only for internet addicts, who are only for internet addicts. 2 whole hospitals. And the treatment program is 9 months to get them off. 9 months. So, I mean, there's no easy answer. I mean, we live in a free country. A lot of, most of these things that we enjoy are free. You can get access for almost no money. I think the fear of missing out, FOMO, is a big cultural issue in our problem. People feel they need to be connected constantly. But there's no question in my mind, there are going to be health consequences. There are going to be psychological consequences for this generation being wired this way. So, I mean, generally, I'm optimistic, but there are problems. And, I don't think there's any easy solutions. You guys ask hard questions. Some of these questions are going to turn into blog posts, by the way. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I was talking with one of the studies about here at JSC, and he was talking about how about like 30 years ago it was normal for everyone to be a Christian in the United States. Do you think social media has kind of had an effect on that, or now it's not that anymore?
Do you have a perspective on that? He's saying that, certainly there's a decline in church going in the United States, and especially with Christianity. Do you think that the internet and social media has had an impact on that? I've never really thought about it, but Steve probably thinks about this stuff more than me.
I think that I would have a really hard time drawing any direct connections to it. I mean, is that in the mix of everything?
One thing, one interesting thing is that certainly when I was a little boy, the church was a bigger part of your social scene. Yeah. That was really your family. And now you've got more opportunities for entertainment and distraction. That might be part of it. That's a really good question.
And I have a personal opinion that I think some of the ways Christians have tried to use the internet as evangelism poorly. I keep thinking of the John Mayer line. Is there anyone who ever recalls ever breaking rank at all from something someone yelled real loud one time? From belief. And I think there's so much yelling real loud on the internet and given the, actually typing those things out, going, I feel better, I got it out off my chest. And you go, and it helped no one. All it did was alienate. So I don't know, that doesn't directly play into that, but I think we've handled it so poorly, and we can be disconnected. So I can rage on the internet, nobody knows who I was, and I don't have to face the consequences of it. Other than, somebody responds back to me and I can parlay right back. So I just think, I love what you said about it. Let's be kind, let's be careful, let's use it as a tool. That's part of what and we need to wrap up here, but that's part of what I love that you started with. I think there was maybe a fear from people when we talk about social media, that we're going to talk about it here, is that we're going to bash it and it's bad and it's melting everybody's brains and that kind of thing. But I love I loved your encouragement to Michael that, hey, you're learning the language of the future. Way to go. That's going to put you ahead. I think that was a perspective I'd never thought of. But I also love that you started with, look at these ways that the internet, that social media has furthered the kingdom and changed your life in these positive ways. And my hope, I guess, out of this is that we would hear those things and be more prone toward those things and see that it's not just about Farmville and Clash of Clans, and games and ranting, but it's about I can change the world.
Showing up.
Yeah, I can change the world, and I could show up in a cyber way, and then it leads to other ways, and a cyber way is a legitimate way. So, thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks for the great questions.